LDBC, this is your boy Coach Sheldon Harrison. I'm live with Jeff of Dreamchasingboxing.
Pay-per-view as a whole, I think, is over. There's literally only a handful of fighters that can even do decent on pay-per-view at this point. So you can't deem that to be a model that's successful or an actual platform. If only one or two people can survive on it, then it's not a platform. That's just something only a couple people can survive on. So I think pay-per-view is pretty much done. Now, as far as HBO and Showtime and just having fights only on there, that is going in an opposite direction, especially in regards to HBO. HBO, they're cutting their budget. They're forcing these fights to be on pay-per-view, which we've already discussed isn't working. Triple G, one of our biggest stars, only did about 100,000. Terrence Crawford, one of our biggest, up and rising star, only did 50,000. So there's no model for pay-per-view on. There's no platform for the pay-per-view market again. Now, as far as just regular HBO, I mean, we've seen good reviews, we've seen bad, but all in all, HBO, I mean, the numbers aren't that good. Let's go to Showtime, for example. Showtime, the Leo San Cruz versus, what's his name, Carl Frampton, only did about 500,000 views. The last fight, what was that, like, one of the best fights, supposed to be action-packed, was Lucas Matthysse versus what, William Podonikov, that did, 600,000. So a lot of these fights aren't getting high numbers. Only a select few dudes, again, only a select few are really doing good numbers, as in Triple G, Andre Ward, Deontay Wilder does $1 million on Showtime. It's only a select few. Overall, most of these guys aren't cracking $1 million views. So I say this, I said all that to say this, man. PBC gives a proper platform for all fighters in the United States and should be the only platform we really see fights anymore. Basically because I don't think boxing is in any position to demand people to pay for it. Coach, let me get your thoughts. Based on all I said, man. I know I went off a minute there.
Nah, that's okay, man. I'm listening, man. I like to listen. I think the pay-per-view model, man, it's dead. Okay, the pay-per-view model right now is dead. But, you see, here was my other argument that I had earlier, man. Okay, so I'm looking at, the UFC and Dana White, okay? The last pay-per-view they did, UFC 201, okay? They did 1.1 million pay-per-view buys, okay? But, you see, here's the system. See, what they do, they put a lot of fights on free TV, okay? Just like the PBC. And, they get good ratings off of those free fights. And then what they do is they host a pay-per-view. Okay, well now, okay, all the crowd and the fans, they pretty much been getting, pampered with these free fights on TV. And then, on the free TV bout, they'll mention, oh, yeah, and don't forget, two of the biggest stars in MMA, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz, will be on live on, pay-per-view. Okay, so see, it's working. I see Al Heyman doing the same thing, but, I still think that the PBC model is going to be a big part. I think it's going to be a big part, man, because I think boxing, man, the free fights got to stay. They got to stay so people can get, they can fall back in love with the sport of boxing, man. Because, I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell does a cue ball head bastard like Dana White get, 1.1 million pay-per-view buys? I mean, who is he, the bald-headed Floyd Mayweather? I just don't get it. But then, I start thinking about it. Yeah, man, UFC is on every day, okay? Al Heyman doing the same thing. PBC is on damn near almost every day, Jeff, okay? Or you can catch quite a few PBC fights. And the matchups are not all one-sided. The matchups are very interesting. Henceforth, let's look at the parallel between UFC. You look at a lot of UFC fights, there are a lot of matchups that are pretty much right down the middle. Those matchups are very challenging. And you compare some of the PBC matchups, those matchups are challenging. They're challenging and they're matched up properly. Now you look at the model we got now, this pay-per-view model, okay? Everybody named Mama knew Terrence Crawford was going to beat the hell out of Victor Postol. I mean, Jeff, that's just the way that is, okay? Everybody knew, okay? So what kind of intriguing matchup was that? I mean, let's really think about it. Everybody named Mama knew Manny Pacquiao was going to beat the dog shit out of Chris Algieri. Everybody knew it. So you kind of look at the pay-per-view numbers with a big megastar like Manny Pacquiao. Now, let's look at Miguel Cotto, okay? Miguel Cotto versus Canelo. Okay, intriguing matchup. Pretty intriguing matchup. A lot of people actually had Cotto winning that fight. So do you see the parallel now when we the fans think the matchups are going to be challenging? The pay-per-view numbers are actually, higher. I mean, that's just my opinion. That's what I've been seeing. But,
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna break down what you said in the beginning into three parts about what the UFC is doing. Now, what I want to start by saying, yes, UFC did over a million. I didn't even know that, but they did over a million for their last pay-per-view. Here's what I have to say about that. UFC did not start off that way. See, a lot of people are expecting immediate results from PBC now. UFC did not start off doing that many views or doing that many numbers on pay-per-view. For those that don't remember, boxing has been doing, in terms of pay-per-view, when boxing has that pay-per-view, is way better than the UFC. But as we can see, that time is changing because the UFC has been consistent and they've been doing it for a very long time and they kept grinding. It wasn't an overnight thing. UFC didn't just pop up and be successful. You know what I'm saying? So when people sit down and expect PBC to just be the shit right away, that's not realistic. However, the reason I sit down and say all these guys should get on board, and when I say these promoters, these motherfuckers need to get out the way, I don't mean get rid of them to the point where there aren't any other promoters. I'm saying get rid of that prideful shit where you're saying, I don't want to work with Al Heyman. Promoters like that shouldn't be in the game because we need PBC. We, as the fans, need PBC, and I'm going to get into back to the UFC. Now, Dana White himself, the guy who pretty much orchestrated the UFC and got it to where it's at now, said that about Al Heyman, finally someone's willing to invest money into boxing. What that means is, much like the UFC, you have to invest money into this. You have to be willing to lose money. And Al Heyman is the only guy, whether people want to admit it or not, that was willing to invest money into boxing. So what this means is that already, when we're talking about a guy, Dana White praises Al Heyman, we know we're heading in the right direction. Now, to continue that and even add on to it, not only is PBC not going to be successful overnight because it takes time, not only is a guy like Dana White supporting it, but we have to understand that we need our guys to be on PBC. And I'm talking about guys like Gennady Golovkin, I'm talking about guys like Canelo Alvarez, because that will help the sport grow. Like you said, man, you're able to, the only reason that these pay-per-views on UFC are able to be a success is that you see them all the time. Whenever they have a free event, they sit down and say, hey, go watch the pay-per-view, da-da-da-da. What I'm trying to say is, we could do something like that, but I'm saying fuck the pay-per-view model completely. That's something, I think bringing boxing back to pay-per-view is something Al Heyman is probably thinking of like maybe 5 to 10 years down the road. Right now, he just wants PBC to be a successful brand where you can just watch it on free TV and they can get advertisers and they can sit down and be able to pay their fighters. I think that's a short-term goal right now. And why that's very important is because we need guys like Gennady Golovkin, because whether you hate Al Heyman, whether you love Al Heyman, or where you sit, if you're a real boxer fan, you have to realize how much a Triple G on PBC would be huge for the sport. And I'm talking about the sport right now as a whole, man. I'm talking about everybody, everything that the sport needs. Right now, Triple G being on PBC is one of the best things that can happen for the sport. Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev should not be a pay-per-view matchup. At most, 300,000 people watch it. Why would you have it on that when you can have it on PBC and have upwards of 4 to 5 million people watch it? Same thing with Triple G, and I understand. This is why I brought up in the beginning baby steps. Okay, maybe ATL's not willing to give up a Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev to PBC. Fine, I get that. I can understand that. Why not have a Triple G fight one of his bums or wherever the fuck he likes fighting? Why not have him fight one of those dudes on PBC? What's the big deal about letting, I don't know, Triple G face a Dominic Wade person, example, right? Why not have that on PBC? Who loses if you sit down and have a guy like Gennady Golovkin, one of the biggest guys in boxing, who needs more fans? And not just him, he needs it. Boxing as a whole needs more fans, right? To sit down and survive, because like I said, man, HBO and Showtime numbers are going down. They're not going up. The only people whose numbers have been rising periodically and sometimes went down as well is PBC. So if you're sitting down and look at that, why would you have Triple G on a platform where the most he'll get is 1.5 million people watching? If Triple G went on PBC right now, you can have upwards of 5 million people watching, and you can have so many more new fans in the sport, so many more young children into the sport. Why are we sitting down limiting a guy like Gennady Golovkin to HBO? If HBO sat down and landed off Triple G to PBC, I'm going to break it down. PBC wins because they get a high-ass rating because they got Gennady Golovkin on there. They do upwards of 5 million, maybe even more views if they have Gennady Golovkin on there. Golovkin wins because he gets 5 million people that wasn't watching him before get to watch him fight. HBO wins because now when Triple G comes back